Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed. At 1,000 subscribers, I'll be posting a special video. The curtain trembled once, then held its breath. I'm Mark, 34, and I had already learned that silence lies. I slid the door with my knuckles and stepped through slow. 2 quick inhalations clipped off behind the dresser. Someone in my bedroom feared being seen, which meant I was late. Anna, I kept my voice level and my feet planted. She stepped out from the far side, cheeks hot and eyes narrow. A muted buzz scratched the air from behind the curtain. Her gaze flicked there and back, a twitch she couldn't leash. If I looked, I knew something would change fast. I crossed the floor and felt the room tilt around the noise. My fingers caught the curtain hem and held a half second. I pulled hard, not brave, just done with pretending. The window stood open an inch, latch tilted and useless. Outside, a shadow dropped low and moved along the fence. I leaned out, shoes scuffed gravel, and then sped up. I could jump down and turn this into a chase. Or I could end one lie before starting another mess. I let the window hang and closed the gap to her. I chose the conversation that would cut deeper. How long? I didn't blink and I didn't step back. Her jaw set and her hands found each other and squeezed. That's not fair. She didn't meet my eyes for more than a beat. The phone behind the curtain buzzed again, like a dare. I turned my palm up and waited for her to decide. She stalled, then pressed the phone into my hand with rigid fingers. I unlocked it because we had promised that long ago. Recent calls queued up with a neighbor's nickname bolded. A message thread hovered near the top with fresh dots. I opened it and stopped breathing on the first image. Her mouth pressed close to someone I knew too well. No filters, no angle tricks, just proximity and confidence. Anna reached toward the screen and froze midair, trembling. That was goodbye, she said, voice low and clipped. Goodbyes do not climb out of windows and sprint. Once, she pushed the word out like payment due. I watched her eyes, not the picture, because truth lives there. Once can end everything, I answered and meant it. Her shoulders sagged and a single nod escaped her control. Confession always changes the math, never the cost. Who? I wanted the sound from her, not from me. Her glance whipped toward the open window and back. I didn't fill the space, I let it bruise us both. Tom barely formed because we both already knew. The neighbor's name tasted metallic and heavy. I moved to the doorway and put my hand on the frame. Retrospect told me to count to 10, I didn't. I pictured the fallout lining up like dominoes with faces. Marriage, street, friends, lawyers, a doorbell somewhere about to ring. I turned back to her because endings deserve witnesses. Closed the window, my voice came out steady and cold. She didn't move at first, then reached and clicked the latch. The room felt smaller with the path sealed shut. I held the phone until my hand hurt, then pocketed it. I already knew my next knock would shake 2 houses. My knuckles hit his door 3 times, hard enough to carry. Footsteps scrambled inside and a latch scraped once. The door cracked open an inch, then went wider. He stood there pale and rigid, mouth held shut. I stepped across the threshold before he breathed. Kitchen, I said, already moving past his frozen stance. A chair dragged back across tile and halted crooked. He hovered by the counter, fingers rubbing his wrist. Talk straight, I said, spine locked, eyes steady. He swallowed and looked past me toward the hall. How many meetings, I asked, each word heavy on purpose. His gaze dropped to the floor and stayed pinned. More than 2, he whispered, shoulders curling inward. How recent, I pressed, pulse hammering but measured. Yesterday, he answered, and the room shrank. My jaw tightened and the chair creaked under my grip. Here or my place, I asked, not blinking. He glanced toward the back door and then the ceiling. Yours, he said, breath catching and never recovering. I pictured footprints crossing our bedroom, fresh and unashamed. Does she know I'm here? I asked, nodding at the stairs. He shook his head and reached for a glass. Water ran and overflowed before he noticed his hand. He killed the tap and braced against the sink. "We thought you wouldn't be home," slipped out like a cough. "Put your phone on the table," I said, palm open. He hesitated and then placed it face down. I flipped it over and opened the recent logs. Her number sat near the top with matching times. No wiggle room lived between those timestamps. A car door thumped outside and a voice floated in. His wife called from the walkway, cheerful and unsuspecting. He flinched and looked at me like a cornered kid. "You bring her in," I said, nodding once. "Secrets die cleaner in daylight with witnesses." He walked to the entry and opened the door halfway. "Everything okay?" she asked. Rosary bag cutting her palm. "Come in," he muttered, shoulders sloped and eyes glassy. I stood in the archway and didn't move an inch. Recognition hit her face and then confusion flared. "What's this?" she asked, voice steady but climbing. Her stare pinged between us like a warning light. "It involves your house and mine," I answered, controlled. She set the bag down fast and squared her stance. "I'm listening," she said, chin lifted like a shield. "I found them together," I said, words clipped and final. She blinked twice and gripped the counter for balance. He reached toward her wrist and she pulled clear. "How long?" she asked, eyes never leaving him. He didn't answer until silence burned. "Months," finally landed, too loud for such a small word. She inhaled once and nodded like a judge. "You used our son's nap times," she said, voice flat. He winced and stared at the floor like confession mattered. She didn't cry, not even close. "I'm filing," I said, because delays breed rot. "You should call an attorney tonight," I added, firm. She looked at me, then at the tabled phones. "Will you tell her?" she asked, breath sharp. "I already did," I said, and the air thinned. She reached for his device and scrolled with quick, sure motions. Threads stacked on the screen like a ledger of risk. Photos flicked by, angles unmistakable, hands too familiar. She stopped on a clip and turned it toward him. "You recorded this here?" she asked, voice freezing mid-syllable. He tried to speak and failed, lips forming excuses. She placed the phone down like it burned and stepped back. "Pack a bag," she said, eyes locked and unblinking. He reached out and she lifted a palm like a barrier. "Now," she added, and the house held its breath. I turned toward the door because my part was done. She walked with me and paused at the threshold. "Thank you for not hiding," she said, tone measured. "I'm done with hiding," I answered, both of us certain. We nodded once like strangers linked by fallout. On the porch I dialed and waited through 2 rings. She picked up on the third with a tight inhale. "I told them," I said, keeping my voice grounded. "I'm going to the courthouse in the morning," I added. Silence sat there, then a small, shaking okay. I crossed back to my steps and stopped before the mat. I didn't go inside because I needed one more task. I opened my camera and photographed the call history. Then the messages, then the clip with the timestamp. Proof cleans the path when anger wants shortcuts. A text came through from an unknown number with one line. "Can we fix this privately?" It read, desperate and stupid. I locked the screen and ignored the bait entirely. Privacy built this mess, and privacy would not save it. I sent the files to my lawyer with no comment. Across the street, a curtain moved and settled. Neighbors clock everything. My door opened behind me, and hinges protested once. She stood there holding her keys and a small overnight bag. "I'm staying at my sister S," she said, gaze unsteady. "Leave the spare on the counter," I answered, voice low. She nodded and brushed past with careful, practiced distance. Our arms didn't touch, though the hall was narrow. At the threshold she paused and looked back one last time. "I'll check in tomorrow for logistics," came out almost clinical. "That's fine," I said, and the latch clicked like a verdict. I waited until her car turned the corner and vanished. Then I locked every entry and leaned into the quiet. Regret tried to bargain, and I let it tire itself out. Resolve took the chair it wanted and did not move. Morning would bring papers, and I would sign them all. I pushed the courthouse door and walked straight to filings. A clerk glanced up and slid a packet across the counter. "Petition with temporary orders," I said, voice clear. She stamped the top page and pointed to the fee window. My hands didn't shake, which worried me more. I signed where the yellow flags demanded signatures. "Service by process server or by waiver," the clerk said. "Server," I answered, because Mercy kept failing me. She typed fast and printed the instruction sheet. "Expect contact today," she added, and I nodded once. Outside, my phone buzzed with a blocked number. I answered and heard a practiced greeting and a rate. "Take it," I said, walking to the curb for air. "Address and description," the server asked, efficient and calm. I gave both and the schedule for access. I dialed my attorney next with the packet still warm. "We will request exclusive use of the house," he said. "Do it," I said, eyes on nothing and everything. "I need a protective clause about the neighbor," I added. Drafting now came back in a smooth rhythm. A message arrived from an unknown contact with a threat. "Delete the clips or I go to HR," it read. I took a screenshot and forwarded it without commentary. Extortion travels poorly when recorded in writing. I Seeked the number and kept walking. The neighbor's wife texted with a line I wasn't expecting. "I changed the door code and moved his clothes," she wrote. "Good," I replied and left it simple on purpose. "Call if you need a witness," followed from her. Allies appear when someone shatters the glass. I returned home for paperwork and found the gate unlatched. The latch had been firm last night and now hung loose. Footprints cut across the damp dirt in a fresh track. I chose not to call first and stepped inside fast. A faint buzzing upstairs pulled me forward like a wire. In the bedroom, a second phone vibrated in the nightstand. I hadn't seen this device in any drawer before now. I lifted it and the lock screen woke with a pattern. 3 tries and it opened with my birthday reversed. The message thread showed only one contact with initials. The initials matched the neighbor, but the tone shifted. "Delete after reading," the latest preview instructed sharply. The thread held logistics, encoded lines, and timing blocks. I scrolled until a pinned note opened with 3 words. "Camera blind spots" in a sketch that matched my hull. My pulse steadied as my focus narrowed on the plan. They had charted my routes and my habits like errands. The note listed Mondays and window times and excuses. Every detail neat and cold, like appointments carved in ice. I took 40 photos and sent them to counsel. A car engine cut outside and then idled in place. I pocketed the burner and slipped down to the entry. Through the peephole, a delivery uniform filled the frame. The man held papers and checked a clipboard twice. I opened the door and put my hand out. "Service for Anna," he said, crisp and routine. "Authorized recipient," I answered, and he marked the line. I signed, took the set, and scanned the header. "Temporary orders, exclusive occupancy, expedited hearing scheduled Friday." The clock in my head reset to countdown mode. My phone pulsed again with a workplace calendar alert. "All staff meeting in an hour, mandatory attendance noted strongly." I considered skipping and chose presence instead of avoidance. Rumors bloom faster when the subject disappears from view. I put the packet in my bag and headed out. In the lobby of my office, 2 managers waited near security. "Quick chat," one asked, hands clasped and tone worried. We stepped into a small room with too much echo. "Your neighbor reached out with harassment claims," came the opener. I kept still and watched for the landmine. "He alleges you threatened him with violence last night," continued the manager. I laid my phone down and opened the new gallery. Timestamps, the planned sketch, the coded thread with initials. Here is my context, I said, measured and direct. Their eyes tracked the photos and stopped on the map. We will record your statement, the second manager said. I wrote it clean and left emotions off the page. They photographed the screen and logged the attachments twice. We appreciate transparency, they added, faces easing slightly. I felt a knot loosen but not release. On my way out, the neighbor waited near the elevators. He stood too close to the doors with an empty smile. Walk with me, he murmured, trying for casual and missing. I prefer witnesses, I answered, stepping back into the hall. Security turned their heads, which was enough. We can end this without lawyers, he pushed, jaw tight. You start by admitting under oath, I said, eyes flat. His grin soured and his lips thinned into a line. You'll lose friends over this, he warned, voice low. I'll keep my spine, I replied, and doors opened. The process server texted that contact had been made at noon. Documents delivered to her workplace reception, the update read. I forwarded the notice to my attorney and waited. He responded with a thumbs up and a drafted motion. File this by end of day, his follow-up pinged. At home, the front lock felt gritty and dragged once. I worked it gently and slipped inside without a sound. The second phone sat where I left it, humming lightly. I searched for cloud backups and found a synced folder. Dozens of recordings waited under generic file names. One opened to a conversation I recognized from the hallway. Their voices interlaced with plans and times and practiced alibis. No romance, just logistics and access and contempt for risk. I let it play until a specific phrase broke through. Use the ladder at dusk, and a laugh that tightened my grip. I emailed 3 files to the detective tip line with context. This wasn't about charges yet, just a record with a number. I marked the message as retained and printed the receipt. If someone escalated, I wanted more than anger to speak. Paper trumps memory when stories start spinning. My doorbell rang and I checked the camera feed. Her sister stood on the step with a tote and envelope. I opened and blocked the hallway with my shoulder. She ked me to deliver these, the sister said softly. A stack of keys landed in my palm like a truce. Is she safe? I asked, keeping my tone even. She is with me, came back with a small nod. She understands the filings, followed after a steady breath. She wants a list of items cleared by Friday, she added. That works, I said, and she exhaled something heavy. After the door shut, I sat at the table and wrote. 1 page of boundaries and timelines and access windows. No insults, no dead weight, just steps and signatures and dates. I photographed the page and sent it to both attorneys. I stared at the pen and felt a new kind of quiet. The second phone rattled again with a fresh instruction. Meet behind the shed at 8, flashed on the screen. So the game assumed the pattern still held tonight. I typed a single reply and kept it clipped. We are done, do not contact this number again. The typing bubble appeared and vanished 3 times quickly. Then one line arrived, colder than the rest had been. You think courts protect you, it read, full of contempt. I took a breath and shut the device off hard. Power only matters when you forget you can unplug. I packed a small bag with documents and nothing sentimental. I threw in clothing for 2 days and left space. My attorney had suggested distance until the hearing landed. So I booked a hotel near the courthouse and left. Night would test the locks and I wanted witnesses nearby. Before driving off, I placed the burner in a metal box. I sealed it and hid it under the passenger floor. If anyone tried to track pings, they would chase shadows. I adjusted the dash mirror and watched the street corners. A dark sedan eased past slow, then looped around again. I pulled away and took 3 right turns for certainty. The sedan did not follow, which tightened the plan. At the hotel, the desk clerk handed me a quiet room. I checked the door and wedged it like I always do now. Sleep came late and left early, but it left a decision. The knock hit my hotel door before sunrise, 3 sharp taps. Sheriff's office came through the wood, clipped and calm. I cracked the latch and showed my ID with steady hands. Emergency hearing moved to noon due to court availability, the deputy said. I thanked him and felt my plan jump a gear. I dressed fast and grabbed the folder with fresh printouts. In the lobby, I called my attorney and got voicemail. Time changed to 12, I said, keeping it crisp. I have additional files and a recorded threat, I added. I hung up and walked into the morning like it owed me answers. At the garage exit, a man leaned on a pillar and watched. Baseball cap low, shoulders squared, phone already recording. Turn around, he said, pushing off like he owned concrete. I kept my distance and lifted my camera toward him. Back up, I said, and a valet looked over. He smirked and closed the gap one risky step. You'll apologize on video, he said, voice oddly bright. The valet moved closer with a handheld radio ready. Not today, I answered, angling so both lenses faced each other. Predators hate mirrors more than witnesses. He read my badge clip and smiled like he found leverage. You work at Norville, he chirped, holding his phone higher. Tell them why you stalk harmless neighbors, he added, pleased. I pointed at the garage camera above us and breathed out. Tell them why you tried to ambush me on private property. Security arrived and slid between us with practiced ease. Either of you guests, the guard asked, one eyebrow raised. I showed my key sleeve and nodded once. The guard turned to the other man and held out a palm. No key appeared and the guard's radio crackled. Leave now, the guard said, stepping forward with authority. The cap tilted, a glare flashed, then retreat. He backed away slowly and filmed until the ramp swallowed him. I saved my clip to 2 clouds and a hard copy. Insurance works best when boredom wants shortcuts. At 10, my attorney returned the call from the courthouse steps. Judge moved dockets, we have 10 minutes max, came through quick. Lied with safety and the burner evidence, he urged. I will ask for no contact and exclusive access, he added. Understood, I said, and my breath settled on command. We met outside the assigned courtroom just before noon. He skimmed my new pages and circled 3 lines. Blind spots note and threat text go first, he said. Then the attempt at the hotel garage, I added. He nodded and drew an arrow toward the heading. Inside, the clerk called our case and the stopwatch started. The judge scanned the petition and lifted an eyebrow once. Respondent not present, the clerk confirmed from the ledger. Proceed, the judge said, and I felt time narrow. My attorney rose and kept his sentences knife clean. We presented screenshots and the map with my routines. We played the short clip where contempt dissolved into logistics. We referenced the morning ambush with corroborating witness names. The judge leaned back and tapped a pen twice. Temporary protection granted, landed like a gate slamming shut. Law enforcement will serve the order this afternoon, the judge continued. Exclusive use of the residence granted until hearing Friday followed. Exchange of personal items via third party only, she finished. The clerk stamped the orders and passed them down. I signed acknowledgement and breathed for the first time today. In the hallway, my phone vibrated with a new unknown. Last chance before I make this ugly, the text warned. I forwarded it to my attorney with the case number. He replied with one word, perfect, and nothing else. Threats become exhibits when daylight hits them. Outside the courthouse, the neighbor's wife waited by the steps. I'm here for my copy, she said, chin set hard. I handed her a duplicate and pointed out the order. He will test it, she whispered, not frightened, just prepared. We will answer with paper and police, I said. Back home, the locksmith arrived with a rolling case. He worked fast and left a sealed tag on each cylinder. I stored the codes and signed his invoice without small talk. He gave me a quiet nod like a medic after triage. Preparedness feels like grief with a toolkit. I needed the latter reference tested or disproved by facts. So I walked the yard line to line and checked access. Fresh scuffs marked the fence rail like a boot had slipped. I snapped photos and measured stride gaps with my palm. The route matched the sketch more closely than I wanted. The doorbell chimed and the deputy held up a folder. "Protective order served at his address 10 minutes ago," he reported. He handed me a card with the incident number highlighted. "Call if he violates, do not engage," he added. I thanked him and memorized the warning like a script. My phone rang with my manager's name on the screen. "We ran your report through compliance," his voice came calm. "HR closed his complaint as unsubstantiated," he continued. "Appreciate your documentation and immediate disclosure," he finished. A sandbag lifted off my chest without ceremony. At 6, her sister arrived with 2 friends and a checklist. They stayed on the porch and texted me the requested items. I placed each listed thing by the entry under the camera. They picked up and signed the receipt page line by line. No theatrics, no drift, just transfer and distance. The neighbor tried a new tactic while they loaded the trunk. A door across the street opened and a drone lifted. It hovered low and tilted toward my porch like a spy. I stepped under it with my phone recording full frame. "Register number," I said, reading the sticker out loud. A kid from 2 houses down yelped and yanked the controls. The drone wobbled and scooted toward the sidewalk in panic. His parent came out and apologized 3 times fast. "It's fine," I said, still filming and reading the plate. I logged the clip anyway because habits form fast. At 8, another unknown message appeared with a worse tone. "Nice locks," it read, followed by my street name. Then a photo of my front step from across the road. I called the non-emergency line and reported a violation. Patrol rolled through in 11 minutes and stayed for 15. The officer took my statement and reviewed the fresh order. "We will document and increase drive-bys through tonight," she said. "Do not respond to texts, keep gathering evidence," she added. Her cruiser idled at the corner for a slow minute. Sometimes a spotlight is the only answer needed. Later I opened the burner and checked one last folder. A single audio file sat there with yesterday's date stamped. I pressed play and listened to 2 voices I recognized. Not their usual coordination, a dispute with edges and cracks. One line cut through clear: "He won't quit until we scare him." I replayed that line twice and felt my fear change shape. It wasn't dread anymore, it was a checklist with teeth. I backed up the file to 3 places and labeled it clean. Then I powered the device down and stored it deep. Preparation became my only ritual worth keeping. Before midnight, a car rolled slow and paused by my curb. My porch camera captured the plate and the dented bumper. The car lingered 20 seconds and then drifted off. I sent the clip to the deputy with the incident number. 2 minutes later he replied, "On it, stay inside." I stood in my hallway and counted 10 steady breaths. The house felt different under orders and new hardware. Not peaceful but defensible, which counts more right now. I checked each entry once without rushing the steps. Then I set my alarm for the hearing and turned out the hall light. The alarm tore me up at 5, hearing day finally arrived. I showered fast and checked the porch camera for movement. 2 cruisers drifted by at different hours during the night. Good. I packed the exhibits and locked the door twice. I wanted no surprises before the judge called us in. At the courthouse entrance, a deputy waved me through briskly. My attorney waited by the elevators with a fresh binder. "We will open with the late-night messages," he murmured. "Then the garage ambush and the plate capture," I nodded. We stepped into the lift and didn't waste air. Outside the courtroom, they stood 20 feet away and stone still. Her gaze met mine once and then slid to the floor. He smirked and folded his arms like he owned gravity. A bailiff watched the triangle and rested a hand near cuffs. I kept my eyes front because attention is ammunition. The clerk called our case and we filed to the tables. Opposing counsel carried a tablet and a confident stride. "Your Honor, we have video contradicting his narrative," she started. A clip played with me at a fence line, shouting. The audio sounded real and the date stamp fit. My attorney lined in. "That's spliced," he whispered, pen tapping once. We waited for the moment he knew would glitch. On screen, my voice overlapped itself for a half second. Digital seams showed teeth if you knew where to look. "Pause at 19 seconds, my attorney requested, tone even. He pointed at the layering artifact and the repeated syllable. "Compression doesn't duplicate consonants in echo-free yards," he added. The judge leaned closer and frowned at the frame. "Source file, please," she asked, eyes narrowing like a vice. Opposing counsel hesitated and glanced at her client for confirmation. He shrugged with an annoyed shake that showed nothing helpful. "We received it by airdrop from an anonymous sender," she ventured. The judge's pen stopped moving and the room chilled. "Unauthenticated," she ruled, and the clip died mid-frame. We shifted to our side and rolled out our material. First the threat with the street name spelled wrong. Then the map with the hall angles labeled clearly. Then the car lingering at my curb with a plate. The judge scribbled 3 notes and lifted a brow. "Any cross-complaint on safety?" the judge asked the table. Opposing counsel pivoted to accusation like a dance. "He attempted contact last night through a family intermediary," she said. My attorney slid a printout across with a timestamp. Her team read the line and found it wasn't me. The judge set her pen down and looked at us. "Permanent order hearing in 30 days, she decided. "Interim restrictions remain and expand to digital channels," she added. "Parties to exchange property via police standbys only," she concluded. The gavel ticked once and I felt my lungs remember work. In the hallway, he drifted near the water fountain. He waited for me to pass close enough to whisper. "You're breaking our social scene," he breathed, jaw clenched. I stopped 2 steps short and let the bailiff catch up. "Your scene broke itself," I answered, voice flat as steel. She approached slowly with a folder hugged tight. "I'm filing for separation today," she told him. His face barely moved, but his nostrils flared hard. "I will testify under oath if needed," she added. He stared at her like she had flipped a switch. My attorney tugged my sleeve toward the stairwell. "Don't gloat," he warned, eyes scanning the railings. I swallowed the reply clawing its way up. We took the stairs down 2 flights in silence. Self-control felt sharp and necessary, not noble. At the clerk window, we paid for certified copies. The clerk stamped each page and slid them back. "Keep one in your car," my attorney reminded me. "Keep another near the front door," he continued. I had already decided to laminate them by dinner. By the exit, a reporter stepped into our path. "Neighbor's dispute spills into court on the record?" she asked. My attorney lifted a hand and shook his head once. "Court filings speak for themselves," he replied, walking. The reporter pivoted to chase the other pair instead. Outside, my phone buzzed with a voicemail transcription. A voice promised workplace complaints and community board posts. The system caught one name mid-sentence and mangled another. I forwarded the file to the deputy with our case number. Response arrived fast, documented, call if contact continues. Back home, a florist van idled near my driveway. The driver checked her manifest and lifted a white envelope. "For owner or occupant," she read, glancing up. I took the card and peeled it open carefully. Inside, 5 words waited: "Meet tonight, no more cameras." I photographed the card and the order slip. Then I told the driver to return the bouquet. "Wrong address," I said, and she nodded with relief. Back inside, I scanned the porch view one more time. A sedan eased by slowly, same dented bumper, same route. I called the non-emergency line and logged a new occurrence. The dispatcher recognized my name in the case notes. Unit will pass through your block within 10 minutes. She confirmed. I thanked her and locked the deadbolt with a firm twist. I wanted him to hear it through whatever microphone he used. My attorney texted an image from a public forum. A burner account blamed me for harassing a good neighbor. Our documents appeared in the replies 5 minutes later. Strangers tore the fake story apart with timestamps and maps. Sometimes the internet builds a wall faster than paper. At dusk, a tap sounded on my back gate, 2 soft knocks. I checked the screen and saw no one standing there. A beat later, my phone lit with a new message. "Open up or we escalate," it read, ugly and direct. I called the deputy before the next knock landed. "Stay inside," he ordered, voice steady and unhurried. "Units nearby are en route," he added, no drama. I waited at the hallway corner and watched the feed. A figure leaned into the lens and cupped both hands. Police lights swept the street before he even straightened. 2 officers intercepted him at the curb with practiced motion. They checked the order and matched the face to paper. He argued, palms up, eyes darting toward my porch camera. The officers kept him at the fender and radioed dispatch. A second car arrived and the cuffs clicked like punctuation. I stepped outside when the officer waved from the walk. "Do you want to provide a fresh statement?" she asked. "Yes," I answered and recited the messages and the card. She photographed the florist's slip and logged the time. "Violation noted and forwarded to the prosecutor," she concluded. They placed him in the rear seat and shut the door. He stared through the glass with a smile that couldn't land. It didn't matter anymore, consequences had finally stepped in. The cruiser rolled away and the block resumed breathing. I stood there and let the quiet test my resolve. Inside, my phone vibrated one more time with a number I knew. Her voice reached me, small but intact. "Is it over?" "For tonight," I answered, not promising more than that. "We keep everything through the weekend," I added. She exhaled and the line went still with relief. I forwarded the arrest log to my attorney and the neighbor's wife. She replied with a single word, "Thanks," and nothing else. I poured water and stared at the front door. The house felt held together by paper and decisions. Tomorrow I would ask the judge for permanence. I woke to a calendar ping and a voicemail from the deputy. "Arraignment today," the transcript read, short and exact. "Good." I forwarded it to counsel and checked the porch feed. No car lingered, no messages pinged, no movement worth noting. Calm can be bait when someone likes escalation. At the courthouse entrance, a line formed, then thinned. My attorney met me with a folder and a nod. "We present the florist card first," he said, tapping the tab. "Then the gate knocks and the arrest report," I answered. We walked inside like people who had rehearsed. Across the hall they stood apart, space like a trench. He didn't look at me, he looked past me. She held a slim notebook and avoided both of us. A bailiff hovered between our rows with practiced radar. Eyes forward keeps things quiet when stakes climb. The judge took the bench and called our matter. Opposing counsel rose with a new tactic and a polished tone. "My client requests mutual no contact to avoid further conflict," she began. My attorney remained seated and slid 2 pages forward. "Violations documented last night and the card delivered," he said. The judge read both exhibits without hurry and looked up. "Mutual orders are not appropriate in these circumstances," she ruled. She turned to me and confirmed I still wanted permanence. "Yes," I answered, hands steady on the table edge. "Proceed with testimony," she said, and the recorder clicked. I described the gate taps and the porch photo. I described the hotel garage encounter and the license plate. I played the audio where fear became a plan to intimidate. Every sentence stayed short because truth carries its own weight. The judge tracked each point and only asked for times. Opposing counsel rose for cross with a quick inhale. You invited private meetings through intermediaries, she pressed. I slid the call log that showed nothing but attorneys and police. She tried another route, you yelled at a fence line. Edited clip, I answered while our expert letter waited in hand. He took the stand next with his jaw clenched hard. Misunderstanding, he offered, palms open like a performance. Apologize for the porch presence, he added, voice smooth. Explain the florist card, the judge asked, gaze direct. He blinked twice and looked to counsel for rescue. His wife stood when the judge allowed limited questions. She kept her voice even and her eyes level. Did you send that card from my account? She asked. He stared at the tabletop and didn't answer. Silence under oath can say more than words. My attorney rapped with the hote. L clip from security. A clean angle showed him waiting by the ramp. No sound, just posture and timing and intent. The judge watched it twice and wrote 2 lines. Request for long-term order is granted, she announced. 3 years, the judge continued, pen stopping on the form. No social media contact, no proxies, no gifts followed. Violations will trigger immediate consequences, closed the ruling. The gavel tapped once and the room released breath. A new boundary stood where chaos used to live. In the hallway he drifted near, testing the edge again. The bailiff stepped between us before he could speak. Exit now, the uniform ordered, palm open and firm. He glanced at me with flat eyes that promised nothing. He turned and walked out alone into a smaller world. She approached at a distance that felt respectful and careful. I signed my petition, she said, voice tight but controlled. I will coordinate through counsel only, she added. I nodded because closure needs fewer syllables than regret. We parted without ceremony, and that helped. Back home, I changed the alarm code and archived every file. I kept one certified copy in the glove compartment. I kept another by the door near the camera lens. I emailed HR a final note with the case number. They replied with support and a closed ticket confirmation. In the afternoon, the deputy called with the update I needed. Bond with conditions set, GPS ordered, no approach zones, he reported. I wrote the limits on a card and stuck it high. Rules make breathing easier when nerves want shortcuts. I deleted his number and emptied the trash. Evening brought a message from her sister asking for pickup. Tomorrow at noon with patrol on site, I texted back. She agreed and sent a one-word thank you. I cleaned the kitchen like a checklist and stopped halfway. Control feels different when it's chosen, not begged. I walked the fence once more and checked each latch. No scuffs, no fresh tracks, no lingering cars. The neighborhood hummed at its usual pace again. My chest loosened a notch I hadn't noticed before. Security can be quiet and still feel strong. Before bed, I opened a blank document and wrote 15 lines. Not a diary, just statements I could verify tomorrow. Dates, times, actions, no opinions crowding the page. I saved it and backed it up in 3 places. Prepared doesn't mean paranoid when patterns exist. I turned off the last light and stood in the doorway. The room looked ordinary, but the choices weren't. I had drawn lines and held them without flinching. Loss stood there and it didn't own me anymore. The future knocked once, this time I chose whether to open.